Good evening, and welcome to this random thought. Something that I do once in a while when there is a thought that I feel I want to share. So, this, as it is, random thought is unscheduled, and there were not even invitations to join me. But I want to talk about a subject this evening that has become a bit controversial. The issue that we find in Ephesians 5:22. I've entitled this, even though it's a random thought, the vexing question of submission in marriage. If there is one text in the Bible that has created some controversy within the marriage setup, has to be this one. And I have listened to others even saying that no, it doesn't really mean what it says. There is a bit misunderstanding. The Bible does not actually say to the man they must submit. Because when you look at it in this postmodern era, the suggestion and just the thought that says submit to your husband sounds ancient, sounds like some of those things that came out from men who are trying to subjugate and to put down women, as if a committee of patriarchy, talk of men with toxic masculinity have come together and put that verse in the Bible. Now, I'm not going to do much justice in this text in this short period, but let's get this thing. So Ephesians 5:22, it says, "Wives, submit to your own husband as unto the Lord." It is clear here that women or wives are not expected to submit to any man, but to their own husbands. Now, clearly, this is an instruction from God coming through here through Paul writing to the Ephesians church. And it is not something that comes from a husband. So obedience thereof has nothing to do with the husband, because it is not the husband who says the wife must submit. In fact, I argue that God did not put men as local enforcers of his instruction. If God says something and he says this is what must be done, he has his own way of enforcing it, and people who don't obey him, they will have to deal with him. So it is incorrect for a man to stand up and says, you as my husband, as my wife, you are doing something wrong because you are not submitting to me. Where do you get in? Because this is an instruction between man and woman. Now, the important thing that I find here, and my argument is simple, is that for those who are not yet married, you need to understand that if you are intending to get married, there will be an expectation from you as a woman to submit to your husband. And if we look into marriages today, and marriages are different. So before you marry a guy, you need to be clear in your mind, firstly, because Ephesians 5:23 says the man is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. Firstly, you must look into this man and say, does he have the leadership capacity for him to lead me? Does he know where we are supposed to go? Will I be able to sleep in the back seat and let him drive because he knows the destiny of where we are supposed to go? Secondly, what will submission to this man mean? And if the man is very tall, is high, and I'm talking about figuratively, not literally. Submission means nothing because you can just walk straight up. But if the man is short, then you need to crawl to submit under him. So when the text says submit to your own husband, it's saying to young women and to those who are not married, when you look for a man, look for one whom you will find it easy to submit, because the nature of who he is, how he conducts himself, how he loves you, how he cares, submission to him means actually a blessing as he leads and guides, because he knows where we're supposed to go. So we cannot get married and then say we cannot submit. No. This is the question that should have been addressed at the very beginning, to say, will I be able to submit to this man? Is he loving and caring? And what makes the text, this hit me this week, what makes the text more clearer, and it hit me when I was talking to a couple, preparing a couple for marriage, and we were addressing this text this week. The part that says, as to the Lord. So obviously, submission here and the whole instruction of women, there is an understanding that you already submit to the Lord. You know how to submit to the Lord. And he says, do it the same way that you submit to the Lord. Which means that if a woman cannot submit to the Lord, there is no way she'll be able to submit to a man. Because in reality, the expectation and of the submission that is done to a man is in the similar way that you submit to the man, you submit to God. So to men, if a woman never submits to God, she will never submit to you, because as you can see, Paul does not describe how you need to submit to your husband. He just says, in the same way that you submit to the Lord. You already know, he's making an assumption as he writes to the Ephesians, that you already know how to submit to the Lord, ladies, and in the same way submit to your husband. And there, when I was discussing this week with this couple, a light bulb opened up. It just became bright where I was sitting. When we go back to the fact that it says your own husband, which means that you need to choose the kind of a person that you will be able to submit to. So effectively, when a guy says to a lady, I love you, and the lady says, I love you too, she actually says, I look at you, and I'm talking about in the context of marriage, that I love you too and I want to marry you. In the context of marriage, she says, I have looked at you and your conduct and behavior. I realize you are a leader. You are a leader par excellence, and I realize that you are a kind of a person with such love, such caring, that submission to you will be a joy. But the thing that hit me this week is the fact that it says, as unto the Lord. So if the standard of submission is the Lord, oh Lord have mercy, that means as a lady, if you are choosing a partner, you need to find someone whose conduct and behavior is in line with the Lord, because you are expected to submit as unto the Lord. And you don't have a problem in submitting to the Lord, because He is a loving Lord. He is a caring Lord. He is never an abusive Lord. He's a God. So that means the spouse that you are going to choose must be someone who knows the Lord, someone who has whose life is modeled on what Christ is. It must be someone who you will not be a difference in submitting as you are submitting to the Lord and submitting to Him. So it actually goes back to say, if you are going to have to choose your own husband, you're going to choose, because all of us, we choose our own husband. Choose one whose walk and conduct is close to the Lord. Choose one who fears the Lord. Choose one whose behavior and conduct is close to the Lord. so that you will not have a problem with submission. So the reason why today we have got women who says they can't submit to their husband is because you made a wrong choice. You made a husband and chose a husband that is unsubmissible, if that's an English word. Because you have chosen one who is low, and therefore you have to crawl. That's abuse. You have to crawl. But let's not throw away the word of the Lord because of our choices. So in reality, God is actually, and this, and I'm going to be talking to young people next month in a camp meeting, and this, I'm excited that we need to bring up this thing, because there is a disconnect between dating and marriage. The dating process seems to have steps in a process into marriage, but there is a serious disconnect between dating and marriage, because the requirements that are there in dating, we talk about love, and we know that love is it's emotional, it's bubblegum, it's how based on feelings and so on. But even the criteria, when a guy says I love you, he should actually be understanding, because if it is the love that leads to marriage, he should be understanding Ephesians 5:25, which says, husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church, which means, and the word used there is agape, which is an unconditional love of God, which loves somebody who is a murderer, which loves somebody who is a pedophile, which means the Bible is saying, husband, agape your wives, love them even if they don't cook, even if they don't respect you, even if they don't clean the house, have an unconditional love. But somehow dating has messed us up, because dating has created an environment where our relationship and our love is just eros, it's just romantic. It has to do with how you feel and how you make me feel. But in reality, a boy should not be saying I love you to a girl unless he understands Ephesians 5:25 and the meaning of agape within Ephesians 5:25. In the same way, a woman should not be saying I love you too when she doesn't understand, and say I want to marry you when she doesn't understand Ephesians 5:22. If she doesn't understand what submission means, and submission to your own husband, and because the word submission means to yield to another desires without resistance, and the truth of the matter is, if we had to ask all women who are married, there are many women who don't even know what submission is, because their life is so easy, because they chose someone whose submission to, it's not a burden. Actually, it's a pleasure. But there are others who, through their choices, they chose someone who is so low, they are forced to crawl, and that's abuse. And now they're arguing we should abolish submission. We can't. And therefore, this message is particularly for those who are young. To say, if the Bible says submit to your own husband as unto the Lord, find the man who is at the same level with the Lord. Find the man whom submission to is not abuse. Find the man who is tall enough that submitting to, it's a wonderful experience. Now we've got people who are married, and they married because of dating, and they married without understanding that the consequence of saying I want to marry you includes, among other things, Ephesians 5:23, that the man is going to be a head. And now they marry somebody with no direction, somebody who does not know where to go, somebody whom they need to direct and give direction, somebody without a purpose and a direction. I like how a friend of mine puts it. He says submission, if you look at it from if you break the word submission, there is sub and mission, sub and a mission. And he says there has to be a mission first before there is a submission. And in reality, That's the truth. The truth is that you need to find somebody with a mission, with a direction, with a purpose on earth. Somebody who needs help. Because he knows where we are going, he's got direction. But if you married a guy without direction, you married a guy who is crawling on the floor without proper self-esteem, a submission to him will be abuse. So if we can just go back and understand, and I'm saying to those of you who are married, for those of you who are already married, it's too late. You just have to deal with it. You're already there. But for you who are not married, look for a man. Forget about this thing of tall, dark, and handsome, and whatever he drives this car or what nonsense that you're prioritizing. Find someone who can lead you. Ephesians 5:23. Find someone whom you can submit to, because submission to him will not be an oppression, will not be that. And so when you say I do, you know you're committing to that. And also for gentlemen, I always say, if she cannot look up to you, if you don't command respect in your eyes, if she doesn't think you know where you are supposed to be going, man, leave her alone. You'll find somebody who looks up to you, somebody who think you know where you're going, and somebody who thinks you have got direction. But also to men, I say, don't get married until you've found your purpose in earth. Genesis 2:18, it says, it's not good for a man to be alone. It's not good for a man to be alone. Create a helper suitable to him, a helper. So you don't need a helper if you have no purpose in life. So before you get married, find a purpose for which you need help. Because otherwise you don't need help. And we need to change this idea. Marriage is wrongly measured by happiness. That's not what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be measured by happiness. And this is where we get it wrong with fairy tales, that they live happily ever after. Nobody lives happily ever after. Marriage must be measured by how it fulfills its purpose on earth. And that purpose is what a man is supposed to have. That purpose is what a woman comes to help. And you can understand within that context of a helper and a man with a purpose that submission is not a submission to the man per se. It's a submission to the purpose. It's a submission to the mission. The mission that we're here to accomplish. But if a guy has no mission, he has no purpose, where will you find a submission if there is no main mission? So it is therefore important that we need to change so that we create a linkages between our dating process and also our marriage. Because at the moment there is a disconnect. This thing called dating is not preparing what we really need on the other side. That's all for tonight on this random thought. Maybe it will be developed further at some other time. Have a wonderful evening.